Good morning, the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 1059 The Zone, 50,000 watt FM, driven by the Ram trucks, Jeep Grand Cherokees, SUVs and trucks, pre-owned and new, Mac Hike and Flowwood, MacHikeFlowwood.com. That's MacHikeFlowwood.com. We're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app. You can watch the show right now on YouTube. Search Out of Bounds Sports. We were talking about the dysfunction at Auburn on the Plains. And I guess it's a race between Auburn and Tennessee as far as, the most dysfunction maybe in the league the last few years. I think it's the most difficult. As difficult as MSU, Ole Miss, and Arkansas is because of the division they play in with the super recruiters and so on. I think Auburn is the most difficult job in the SEC because of who they share the state with, right? And it drives them to be dysfunctional and maybe bipolar. We want to welcome in ESPN National College Football analyst Tom Luginbill on the Bucked Up Energy Drinks guest line. Tom, it looks like this thing could go this week with Brian Harsin, fair or unfair, and they could be in the middle of another coaching search. What is your reaction?
Auburn being Auburn. I mean, it's essentially what it is. This isn't, the exception. This is kind of the day-to-day norm with them. And, I've always said with that job, you're hired to be fired. All right. It's only going to be a matter of time. And I always point to like him or dislike him, but there's two coaches in college football that have beaten Nick Saban twice, two or more times. One of them is Dabo Swinney. Who's the other one?
Gus Malzahn.
That's exactly right. And so you're sitting there and you're looking at Auburn and you're saying, okay, this is a football school, unbelievable tradition, always have way too many hands in the cookie jar. We want to beat Alabama, but we want to be Alabama. See, those are two different things. And I think that's the challenge with that job is, okay, if you beat Alabama, that's great. We want to win the Iron Bowl, and I'm looking at this from an Auburn perspective. But if you want to be Alabama, is that realistic? Are you a 12-1 program each and every year? I don't think you are capable of being that when you have as much dysfunction internally as they have, because then you're going to have no consistency. All right, you're going to have no blueprint. Everything's always up in the air with them. And, I've always been a Brian Harsin fan. I think he's a really good football coach. I think maybe bit off more than he could chew in relationship to what he was getting into. What you think you're getting into and what you're actually getting into, I think he has found out are two entirely different things. I do know he's very, very hard to work for. Where I get concerned is when I hear about athletic director player meetings. That's never good for the sitting head coach.
No, it's not. And the fact that they also have an Army lieutenant, retired Army lieutenant general, who spent his career in the intelligence community, doing the interviewing and investigation, that tells me they're just looking for any reason / nugget to fire Brian Harsin. Lukes.
Yeah, I think you're – and again, too, when you're going to have player discussions, which players are you bringing in?
Exactly.
Because it's not like the entire team is anti-Brian Harsin or feels like they've been, mistreated or what have you, whatever has been alleged out there. I just don't – I think when there's that gap between you have your player, you got the coach, you got the administration. When the administration's bringing in players, that doesn't bode well for you. And, the question you then have to ask yourself is, and I've always said this about Tennessee, too, the difference between Tennessee and Auburn is Auburn's won a lot more football games during their run of dysfunction than Tennessee has. But it's a big job. It's a big money job. You have the opportunity to play in the best conference in the country. It's been proven that you can, win a national championship, play for national championships, win the conference championship. But if you want to go out and say, let's just say you're targeting the best of the best, if somebody's at a good spot right now, knowing what we all believe about Auburn, right, wrong, or indifferent, true or untrue, is that coach going to be willing to leave where they're at to take the Auburn job?
Yeah, I don't think there's that many of those guys out there. Even though, like you said, it's a really good program. They have a ton of money. They're committed, and you can go and get rich and get fired. But I think you're right. I mean, other than Hugh Freeze, just because of where he is at Liberty, and he wants to be at a top 25 job.
Sure.
But you start asking the question, Jeff Brom, probably going to look at it and go, even though he's at Purdue, no thanks. Matt Campbell, even though he's at Iowa State, no thanks. I mean, you just start kind of throwing guys out, Lugs. And I know there's some wonderful G5 coaches, but you know how some of these Power 5 programs are. They're like, we can't hire a G5 coach.
No, we can't do that.
Even though the guy's excellent.
It doesn't matter how good a football coach you are.
Right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're really, really good at your job. We can't do that. I mean, but that's the problem with the whole thing, right? It's so narrow-sighted in terms of, because when this happens, and if this thing goes down the way a lot of people are suspecting it's going to, you talk about pressure on the administration. You can't miss on this next one. Like, you have to be right on this next hire if that happens.
Oh, man. I mean, do they hold their nose and hire Hugh Freeze? Because Hugh brings excitement. He knows how to coach the most important position on the field, and they move that thing around on offense. And Lugs, you just mentioned, hey, they've won a national title. They played for another one. But the interesting part is Auburn really hasn't made the transition to fun, vertical passing game football like a lot of other programs that we didn't think would have. Your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that because it is a place that you can attract talent. You can get playmakers. You can get guys to compete with the LSUs and the Georgia. You had Clemson with 2 first-rounders. You just had Ohio State with 2 first-rounders. You have Alabama now. It's going to be probably sitting on back-to-back first-rounders. Auburn needs to get one of those guys, right? And if you look at a Hugh Freeze, you look at an attractive offensive guy, does that help from a recruiting perspective of getting that type of guy to go to Auburn versus somewhere else? Yeah, it probably does. You know, it probably does. And then you have to ask yourself the question has Hugh Freeze in the eyes of the conference, whether it's Greg Sankey or whoever, has he paid his penance yet, right? Like, is he out of image rehab jail? I mean, I think it's been long enough. I think we need to move on.
Sure. Do you think Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds show? What do you think about Dave Clawson at Wake Forest? Do you think he would take that job or go, I don't want all that?
Well, I think here's the problem. I think he's one of maybe the top 5 best football coaches in college football right now. I mean, he is, as far as an evaluator, a developer, an in-game coach, there's not many flaws with that guy, all right? And the problem is I think you would have a little bit of the same reaction to a G5 coach because of where he's at. Fair or unfair, whether it's arrogance on behalf of Auburn's part and their power brokers and their boosters, Dave Clawson is such a man of integrity. I don't know if he wants to deal with any of the other stuff that comes along with that job. I don't know if he wants to, dip his toe in those waters. I think he would be a phenomenal hire. I mean, I really do. I think he's that good. But again, the question becomes, let's just say the money's $3.8 million and $5.1 million, and the place you're at 3.8, and the place you're possibly going is 5.1. That gap in between there, how important is that to take on all of the other stuff?
That's a great question, Luke. It's like we know Freeze would jump at it.
Million, yeah, whether it's $7.5 million at one place and it would be $9 million there. Is that $1.5 million worth you're going to be rich. You're rich already. You're happy. You're coaching. You got a great fan base. You got the great back. You got all this stuff. Is it worth it? That's the question they got to ask themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I'm literally going through Power 5 coaches that are kind of on the fringe, top 25, top 30 jobs that have shown they can win a little bit. Brom and Campbell obviously jump out. And I can't think of anybody who would take the job. Now, again, we go back to the same.
Who I think would take the job?
Who?
James Franklin.
Are you serious?
Well, dude, from a recruiting perspective, bro, I mean, you're right smack in the middle of everything. You know how hard it is to get kids on campus in
I've been there.
College PA?
Yes.
Yeah, man. I mean, there are some recruiting challenges there. He has been in the SEC. He knows the South. Now, to be honest with you, I can't believe they signed him an extension off of the season that he had.
I know.
And I know that things haven't been maybe going the direction, or they've been going in the right direction, but maybe not at the pace people have expected. But that one wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, but this year was weird with James Franklin, Tom.
Absolutely
I recognize he is a good football coach. I recognize how bad Vanderbilt is because I grew up here and I've watched Vandy and Ole Miss play for 40 years. I mean, it's bad football. But there's got to be some concern on how bad they were this year. And the fact that he and his agent were able to, because so many jobs came open, he and his agent were able to leverage a $55 million contract or whatever from Penn State. Tom.
Is that unbelievable? How does that happen? Like, how does the administration, I have to get off point here, but how does the administration at Penn State go, not just say, no, you're good. You're going to work out the rest of your contract, and then we'll come a time and we'll sit down and discuss an extension at the necessary time and call his bluff.
Well, that's what you're waiting for athletic directors to do that. I would have just said, okay, show me where you have a job offer. When you can show me that you have a job offer, then we'll think about, but just because, and I know you know this guy, and I'm not picking on him, but just because Bruce Feldman's writing on theathletic.com that James Franklin may be one of 7 candidates for X, Y, and Z job doesn't mean that you're close to getting a job offer, Luke.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Huh.
It is funny, though. I find I do the same thing that you do. I go through and I'm looking at the Power 5 guys. I'm looking at the guys that are, good football coaches, prominent guys, and I just ask myself, would they take the job? And it's a fun exercise because you start,
Mark Stoops would not take the job. Jeff Brom's not taking the job. Matt Campbell's not. In my opinion, those 3 guys are not taking that job, Tom.
Well, Mark Stoops is exactly who Auburn should go after.
And I think he would decline it because of just what we've talked about the last 15 minutes,
Oh, he would have to ask himself the exact same question we just posed. I thought LSU should have hired Mark Stoops. I thought that would have been a fantastic hire. Not that Brian Kelly's not, but
Luke Fickell's not taking that job.
No.
He's in his home state, right? I mean,
right.
Until something happens, like if Harbaugh went to Minnesota. And I know he's an Ohio State guy, but so was Bo. So, but unless something – oh, well, here we go. If James Franklin were to move, I could see Luke Fickell being in the mix for Penn State, Tom.
Absolutely.
But I don't think Fickell would take Auburn just because of everything we're talking about.
Yeah, listen, the guy's barely spent a week outside of the state of Ohio his entire life. I mean, I think he's just – born and bred Midwest, man. That's who he is. It's part of his personality, part of his temperament. And I would agree, unless it was a big name Power 5 job in that footprint that fits him, I don't see him, being in the mix too. I love the Dave Clawson call. I thought that's a really, really good one. Mark Stoops be a really, really good one. But it is fascinating when you look at a job like Auburn and what we all believe it to be and think in some ways it is, how hard it is to come up with somebody who'd take it.
I'm trying to think through right now, Tom, with all the jumping around we had this past year. Like, who's the hottest coordinator at the Power 5 level at an elite program, if you will, that would bring enough cachet and cred and all that to the table to get War Damn Eagle Nation all hot and bothered, right?
You probably figure it would have been Jeff Levy, right?
Oh, Levy.
I mean, if we're talking hot coordinators and this and that, that's probably the one guy.
Yeah,
I don't think that's happening.
No, I don't either. But you're right. Oklahoma paid him almost $2 million to go.
How about this though? Remember way back, because when I think of Auburn, I think of all the things that they keep going through and how dysfunctional the whole thing. It's no different than the University of Texas. Do you remember when Charlie Strong got that job? There was like 6 people that got offered the job and wouldn't take it. at Texas. Like, what does that say about Texas?
Yeah, well, talking about dysfunction. And I don't know enough about that program. You probably, as much as you've traveled and called multiple conferences over the years, I don't understand why, other than the 5 years that Mac Brown bottled, which was very, very impressive. Since 1980, since I can kind of remember life in sports, they have been pretty much slap average or below average. And I don't understand what's in the water over there and why they can't get the culture right. Now, Sark may turn this bad boy around, but, man, it could be a Herculean effort in Austin for Sark to even get this done, Tom.
Yeah, and the thing is, you got to deal with all of the things that come along with it and all the different hands in the cookie jar and, you know, the powers that are working behind the scenes.
Let me jump in there. And see, it seems like Jimbo's got everybody on the same page at A&M, you know?
Yeah.
And Jimbo's going to be able to maybe out-recruit his coaching, which I think Kirby somewhat did, although they're good, but maybe not just super off the charts, X's and O's special. But, like, it looks to me like Jimbo's got everybody on the same page in College Station, and maybe Sark gets that done. He hadn't been there long, but if you don't, storyline in Texas, because Texas, as you know, is going to be in our conference before we know it.
Right. And I think the only thing that can derail Jimbo is if he doesn't start winning more games. Because we can talk recruiting all we want, and this recruiting class he just had, it's fantastic. And I keep getting everybody asking me, is this the best recruiting class of all time? And my answer is, I don't know yet. Because I know what some of those Clemson classes have done. I know what those Alabama classes have done. I know what some of those Ohio State classes have done.
Right. Okay, well, let me ask it another way. Since you've headed up recruiting for 15 years for ESPN and evaluated thousands of prospects and monitored this, and you're right, you got to land top 5 classes other than Clemson to win natties. On paper, in the modern era, let's just take the last 15, 20 years, on paper, is it the best recruiting class you've ever seen?
I'd say it's on par with the Alabama 2017 and 2021 class.
Okay.
And I think that's fair. And again, the difference is, how do you turn those paper champions into on the field champions? That's the thing, because we can get all excited all we want about it, but you know, the results have to come for Jimbo. They have to come for Texas A&M, because what will happen is if they do, then you'll start signing classes like that every year.
Right.
Now you've turned yourself into another Alabama, but that hasn't happened yet, so we got to wait and see.
Okay, let me follow that up with Texas A&M's class. Is it the best D-line class on paper? Because it sure looks like it to me, but you know more than I do.
Yeah,
is the best D-line class you've ever on paper?
Probably. That is a haul up front. I mean, whoa. I mean, and again, those are the types of guys, you hear me say it to you all the time, right? Everybody needs those guys, and there aren't enough of them. Right? And there's a reason Clemson and Alabama and now Georgia and Ohio State have been better than everybody because of those positions. And now A&M's starting to load up on those positions. That's what makes the thing potentially scary, but you've got to get results.
Right. Does this a lot in Georgia, and we've had a couple come through here that were Jeffrey Simmons, Robert Condici, day one guys. It looks like to me they signed like 5 guys that are so refined and advanced, Tom, they can either start or be in the 2 deep day one.
Yeah. Oh, there's no question. And, you know, they're going to have to get a lot out of them, because all of those guys, if they pan out, they're only going to be there for 3 years.
That's true.
So, you know, they've got to get them in the mix and sink or swim and see who can go. And they're all going to have the opportunity, because talent-wise, they're all there. But, you know, as we've always talked about, let's see what they do. Can they handle all the other stuff that goes along with it?
Yeah, can Max Johnson be who he needs to be? Or I guess Haynes King, if he hangs around. Obviously, can Jimbo upgrade and not get in the way at the quarterback position? And then these guys that we're referencing, you know, and can DJ Durkin according to the defensive scoring efficiency numbers, Elko's better, but Durkin's still a good coordinator. So those are all, fascinating, questions. And so, all right, Tom Luginbill on the next time we have Tom on, we could have a coaching search at Auburn, which could be nuts. And we'll have a Super Bowl champion. How about Joe Burrow, man? I mean, how about this young man just getting it done? It's such a great story. He's so much fun to watch. I'm excited about it. Have you got your menu set for Sunday afternoon, evening?
I don't yet. I haven't even looked that far ahead. Right now I'm in a day-by-day mode because for the first time in a long, long time, I'm getting to kind of dictate my own schedule on a day-to-day basis. So when I get to Super Bowl Sunday, I'll figure that out.
All right. Well, I hope you'll have a cold beer or a bourbon cigar and some good food on the grill or in the stove oven, and enjoy yourself this week. That was a great hit on Auburn and just kind of college football there. The James Franklin thing is interesting and intriguing to me too. Have a great week. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and we'll talk next week.
All right, man. Take care, bro.
See you, buddy. Tom Luginbill, national college football analyst with ESPN, on the Bucked Up Energy Drinks guest line. So if Auburn opens today, tomorrow, whenever, you get a coaching search in February, which is rare. You get they're a top 15 program. They've won my whole life. Auburn has never really gone through a 3 to 4 year stint where they 4-8 this thing, or back before we played 12 games, 5-6, 4-7 this thing. I mean, they have had some bumps in the road. Now, they haven't won back-to-back 10 games in 40 years? So they've had these highs. They were the best program in the SEC in the 80s. They just came up short. I mean, once Pat Dye got in and got that thing rolling, I mean, they were within a whisker twice winning the national title. Coach Paul Bear Bryant steps down, right, after the 82 season. Dooley caught lightning in a bottle in 80, but they weren't, And then the 90s, they went through some things. Pat Dye stepped down, but didn't really. And then they go through Bowden, and then Tuberville gets there. Interesting. It's a get rich, get fired program with a lot of dysfunction, but still has a ton of toughness. And they played defense out of their minds for 40 years and done just enough offensively with Bo Jackson, Cadillac Williams, Ronnie Brown, and of course Cam, who may be the greatest college player I've ever watched play live. The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by Went McGee, Mortgage Man.